I have been in the military, in the Navy, for 9 years now. I lived in a bunch of places throughout the West Coast. I even went overseas. 19 years old, when I first joined, I got my orders to Lemoore. It's in the Central Valley in California. Shortly after arriving, though, I found out I was pregnant with my first kid. That changed everything, so I was supposed to live in the barracks. I ended up getting offered a house on base. I was married at the time. We were kind of excited. This was the first time I got to live in my own place outside of my parents' home. It was a 2-bedroom, 2 stories. I remember walking into the house when we first got offered it. It was really nice. I was really excited. The minute you walk into the living room. It's not very big now that I think about it. I was 19. It was big at the time. The ceiling was high. Directly to the right of us was this wall divider thing. It wasn't a full wall. There was a doorway that led into the kitchen. You can walk around the wall and it takes you back into a circle, back into the living room. When you go upstairs and look down, you can see the whole living room. We had our couch set up. You can see everything. There was only 2 bedrooms. One was slightly smaller. Directly across it was our master bedroom. When we were first living in there wasn't anything creepy. Of course, at the time, I wasn't thinking this place might be haunted. That's not usually your first thought when you move into a place, at least for me. Nothing really happened other than minor creaks in the floor. But like I said, I wasn't thinking about anything like that. And my then husband, he used to always try to find rational reasons for things because I like to watch scary movies, scary shows. But if I watch it, I'm waking him up at 3 o'clock in the morning because I gotta go pee. And he's like, why do you do that? Why do you watch these things and you get scared? To this day, I still like to watch scary movies. I was further in my pregnancy. My husband started setting up the nursery. He painted the walls pink and gray, and we had all these little decorations. I always found myself hanging out in there. I was 5-6 months pregnant. I'd find myself in there constantly pulling out the little baby clothes, rearranging the room, moving the crib around. It just felt warm. I don't know how to explain it. It was very comfortable. I would read during the day and I fall asleep in there on the little couch we had. I did that almost to the end of the pregnancy till I delivered my baby. Sometimes cabinets would be open in the morning when we come downstairs. I was just thinking, I have pregnancy brain. I probably left it open. We used to leave our garage door open when we want to come out, get some air. We didn't have much of a backyard. It was really small. We'd come out. There would be times where I'd be home. The door would sound like it shuts closed on its own. And my husband would talk me out of it and be like, no, it's probably the wind. I had my baby. For the first couple weeks to months, I would have her sleep in my room in a bassinet or playpen. I was a first-time mom. I was just worried. I wanted to be able to get to her if I need to. I was pretty paranoid. She slept in my room. After months of baby crying, my husband was like, hey, we need our own time to ourselves about having the baby. She's fine. She's okay. She'll sleep through the night. He convinced me, let's try and get her used to sleeping in her crib. I was still like, no, that's my baby. I need to have her close to me. Eventually, I was like, yes, we set up the room for her. The room, it felt darker. There'd be nights that my daughter was just very cranky. I could not get her to settle down. She probably was teething. There were some days that were worse than others. Those were days I felt this weird energy in the house. I'd be sitting down with my baby in the living room watching something on TV, and it felt like somebody was standing up there. My husband was at work, working the night shift, be at home by myself. It felt like there were certain moments where there was just somebody up there. I'd hear creaking. Those floors creak really bad, especially when you're walking. I was by myself, and I would hear little things like that. The door creak in my bathroom. I tried as much as I could to stay downstairs. I didn't like being on that same floor by myself. Until bedtime, I'd stay down there. I tried to convince my husband. He's like, oh, it's just the house. He just always brushed me off. I still had a bunch of her stuff in there in the room, her clothes, some of her diapers. I hated it. So eventually things started coming out of the room more and more, and my room started looking like a nursery. I didn't want to leave her in there. I didn't have any experiences in there yet. It just didn't feel like that warm, safe place. I wasn't very happy about it. She usually had nap times in the late afternoon. This would be a good time to try. Since I'd be awake, I could go put her down for a nap. I would be downstairs. I was paranoid, but I did have this really cool baby camera. I'm pretty sure it was unnecessary, but I'm glad I had it. I set her down in the crib. I had the one camera facing into the crib. We had a dresser that was parallel to her crib where you can see around the crib, and I had one facing her. I set everything up. I checked the temperature, make sure it wasn't too warm, too cold, make sure the windows were closed, all that stuff. And I was like, all right, I think she's okay. She had a little night light set up. It was pretty bright, but I had curtains in there and I dimmed the lights a little bit so she can sleep. I triple checked everything. I gave her a little squeeze on her leg, a little kiss on her forehead. I was about to turn around, and at the corner of my eye, it just looked like a dark spot, like a shadow was being casted by something. Maybe I'm just tired. I brushed it off, turned back, looked at my baby. She was good. I looked back. It was still there. I shook it off. It's just my eyes playing tricks on me. I go downstairs. I'm looking back and forth to the camera while I'm cutting up my vegetables. And I thought I saw something again. A glitch on the screen. I looked back at it later on. Looking closer at it, it looked like those little orbs or a bug. Maybe it's dust. The way that these two orbs were floating around wasn't like dust. The way these two little lights were flying around was in a circle, in like a figure 8 motion right above my daughter's crib. I ran upstairs, grabbed her, and took her downstairs, and I was hysterical. My husband, he's like, it's dust or whatever. It just bothered me because he wasn't taking me serious. After that, she wasn't sleeping in that room anymore. She's been in my room. Nothing else really has happened. I try to walk by the room really quickly. I don't like looking in it. I feel like I'm going to see something. I ended up closing the door. There wasn't much going on. The cabinet thing wasn't happening. I wasn't paying attention. I had a newborn baby. I had to go back to work. It was just that room that felt weird. I stopped going in there. It felt so heavy. I don't know what those orbs were. I didn't like the way it was flying, in that it was flying together, in sync together, like in a circle 8 motion. It just didn't look like two bugs would do that. It didn't feel safe. I just stayed out of that room. I met my friend Kim. She was a new mom too. I invited her over to my house for the first time. Her daughter is a couple months younger than my daughter. They were into the same things. She wanted to see the nursery. She said it was really nice. She did mention, why is it so like empty in here? She looked around the room. It was quiet for a little bit. We got downstairs. We went outside to go have some coffee and talk. She asked me, is there something weird going on in that room? I was so confused. What do you mean? She was hesitant. She told me when she was younger, and up to this day, she's able to see things, feel things. She's more like sensitive to seeing things, feeling things that aren't there. I never told her anything that was going on in the house, but then she started to confirm it. She told me she felt a very strong, heavy presence in the room. I was just sitting there so confused. She feels it was a male presence. He makes himself big. That's how he's presenting himself. He doesn't seem violent. He doesn't want to hurt you, but he's upset, disturbed, like annoyed. I'm just sitting there waiting for her to be like, just kidding. She's dead serious. And I was like, can you see him? Yes, in the corner by the closet, which is where that dark spot was. Oh my God, I was a little shaky. We heard pressing down on the wood like someone's taking steps across the bedroom upstairs. It was heavy. It wasn't stomping. It was one of those creepy step, 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 just above our head. After that, we got some sage. She did her thing. I had no experience in all that stuff. She's like, yes, we need to do a cleanse. She did that. She told me I could do it by myself, but I was terrified. But I would have to be direct and be like, you're not welcome here. I wasn't about to go do that by myself. I was there with her and she did it. I decided to have a barbecue, hang out, have some drinks at my house with a couple coworkers, and she was there. I knew we were gonna drink, so I took everybody's keys. Nobody was gonna drive home. We were in the garage. Eventually, everyone passed out. The next morning, I woke up. Everybody was passed out in my living room. My best friend, she slept in the nursery. The next morning, we're all having a movie day. The lights were dim because everyone was hungover. My best friend and I, we were both sitting closest to the door part, the entrance of the kitchen. We saw a shadow. It looked at past that doorway. There wasn't a door. It was like a rectangle in the wall that made a walkway to the kitchen. We saw a shadow walk by. I looked at her. We didn't say nothing. I looked at her, she looked at me, she gave me this weird look. We were watching, scanning the whole wall as if we know that something is walking. We looked at the staircase. It squeaked. That first step squeaked like someone stepped on it. That step, it was known to squeak every time anybody walks up it. If you step on it, it makes that weird creak noise. At the top part, the middle part where the next set of stairs go, it squeaked again. We heard some thuds upstairs. Those were the weirdest things that happened in that house. I try to look up on the internet. I'm convinced the military wouldn't allow stuff like that to get published. I did do some digging. That area in Lemoore, Hanford, it used to be part of a huge lake, Lake Corcoran. This lake was drained out into, I think, San Francisco. It's a dried lake now. The rivers were diverted for farmland. All the rivers were diverted and dried up these lakes, and it was 758,000 years ago. It was inhabited by a lot of Native Americans. My friend, she was telling me that he did feel like an older spirit, like a Native American. This whole area. There was rumors that when they expanded the flight line on this base, they found bones. This is all rumors. I try to find out why. I'm part of a Facebook group. I'll talk about these hauntings on this base. When I first moved in, that wasn't my initial thought. Surprisingly enough, there is a lot of stories that's been going on in all these houses over here. I don't know if that's coincidence, but it's weird that there's a lot of stories that happened. I eventually moved out of Lemoore. I went to Washington. I had some weird stuff happen there in that housing. And I moved overseas to Japan on a Marine base, an old Marine base. Stuff happened there. I thought it was following me for like a minute there. I was stationed in Bremerton, Washington. Also an old town. It was by a lake. When you move into housing, they tell you not to go digging. There can still be some explosives. There's probably some stuff that happened there back in the day. It's at a naval base. I was in a 2-story at the time. I was pregnant with my second child. It was a weird experience. My son was very colicky. That's my second baby. He was 5 months old. I had this little table sitter. It's like a baby feeding chair, but you can sit it on the counter. He was crying. I'm washing dishes. He stopped crying. I turned and the balloon that was in the living room was floating right in front of him. It wasn't touching the ceiling like a helium balloon. It goes straight up to the ceiling. No, it was floating directly face level with him. He's on the counter, so it's face level with me. He's just staring at it. I stopped what I was doing. I looked at it. I swiped my hand under the balloon and over to see if there's some weird, I don't know what I was thinking. But it was only me. My daughter was in the living room watching TV. My husband, he was at work. So just me and the kids. My daughter's still sitting in the living room, undisturbed, completely focused into the TV. This balloon just goes right in front of my child. He stops crying. I was so creeped out. It was so weird. It wasn't floating. It was staying there. I had a grandparent pass away around that time. I did call my mom, and she's like, maybe it's so-and-so's trying to calm him down. I don't know, but I don't like it. I couldn't reenact it. I couldn't make it happen like twice. I was trying so hard. I was like, no more balloons in the house. I called my best friend. She was still in Lemoore. I was like, that was weird, right? She was like, yeah, that makes no sense. That balloon incident was pretty scary. I'm now stationed in Japan. It's a Marine base. The houses are set up really weird. The house was 3 stories high, but it was so narrow. You had neighbors on both sides too. All the lights had motion sensors. There's a little red light that flashes when it senses motion. It turns the light on to the staircase. I just turned off that sensor, the light sensor, but it still caught motion. It would still flash red. It wouldn't make no noise. I didn't want the lights going on and off. We had a couple instances where it did happen. It might have just been my kid or somebody walking by, but I turned it off because I didn't want to creep myself out. But it clicks even if the light doesn't come on. The light flashes and it clicks. We were downstairs, me and my 2 kids and my husband. We were watching TV. You can kind of see the sensor from the living room. We would hear the click noise. I'd look back. I'd see the sensor flashing. There's another sensor at the top of the stairs. If you walk by the bottom, it clicks and then it turns the light on. Everybody was downstairs. The sensor clicks. I see the light flash. It flash, flash, flash. It flashes as long as you're in the range of motion. It stops flashing. I'm still looking at it. Stop flashing. It clicks again at the top of the stairs. This has happened multiple times in the house. I had the housing maintenance people come look at it. They said everything was functioning correctly. I hate those sensors. They installed one in our master closet. There's a sensor in there. The idea is it's convenient. You walk in, you don't have to flip a light switch on. It just turns the light on for you. But there would be times where 11, 12 o'clock at night, I'm laying in bed. My kids are in bed upstairs. They're in the 3rd floor. It's already late. They've been asleep since 9:30. I'm still up on Facebook. My husband's asleep next to me. The closet sensor clicks. I turned off the light function on that one. It clicks. It did it almost every night that I was living there. I called the maintenance guys. Can you take this off? They can't make any modifications like that. They said everything was working perfectly fine. It was just creepy. I was deployed most of the time when I was living in Japan. The one thing I can think of was upstairs in my kids' room, the 3rd floor. My kids drew on the wall. They drew these most disturbing pictures. They make the head really big, but the eyes look like they had stitches on them. I try to ask, and they're like, oh, it's my friend or whatever. Of course, they got in trouble for drawing on the wall, but when I was trying to clean the wall, I was just creeped out because I was like, what is this? My husband tells me that he wanted to get the house blessed when I came back from deployment. My son, he saw a lady and a man upstairs. I don't know if something's following me. I don't know if it has anything to do with these old military bases, but it gives me goosebumps. I am stationed on this base again, Lemoore, but I do not live in base housing, thankfully. There hasn't been anything weird going on yet. I still follow that page and did read a story about the housing. There's a part in the base where it's just housing, military housing. The rest of it's operational. There's this big empty grass field in the back of the housing directly. There used to be old houses there. It got demolished. And so this military police officer, he shared a story on there. He had responded to a distress call, like a domestic violence call. He gets the address and goes responds to this, but it leads him to this field. He calls his dispatch back and says, "Are you sure you gave me the right address?" The person in San Diego was like, "Yes," and then repeats the address back and says, "I'm on the phone with this lady right now. She's giving me the address. She's hysterical. I could hear the husband in the back." He's like, "Can you give me the address again?" It's still at this empty field. The phone disconnects. He shared this story. I got goosebumps. That field it's a huge empty field, and there was houses there before my time in 2014. I know it was being demolished. They were cleaning up like the scraps. Now it's a big grass field. When he shared that story, I want to say a month ago. And I was reading it. I was like, oh my gosh. People would post stories on there about doors being open and closed, cabinets, weird things like that. I haven't seen anything posted from the address that I lived at. Maybe they're not on the page. I want to know if they had any experiences. I did drive by the house. It's still really creepy.